Picture this. You're 67. It's a Tuesday morning, and you didn't wake up to an alarm. Your body just woke up the way it used to, before everything got so noisy. You make your coffee without rushing. No work emails to check because there aren't any. You sit by the window and you just think, yeah, this is all right. This is actually all right. Now picture the other version of that same Tuesday. You're still 67. You're still working. Not because you want to, but because the numbers never quite added up. Every single month is this quiet tug of war between what you need and what you've got. And there's this thought that just lives in the back of your head, this low hum that says, I should have done something different back when I still had the chance. Here's the thing I really want you to sit with before we get into anything else. That gap between those two versions of you at 67, it doesn't get decided when you're 60. It doesn't even get decided at 55. It gets decided in your 40s. And if you're in your 40s right now, 40, 43, 48, wherever you are in the middle of the most financially important decade of your entire life. Not the most intense, not the most eventful, but the most important. And almost nobody actually talks about it like that. You know what actually frustrates me about how money gets talked about in this country? We're obsessed with your 20s. Start early. Invest young. Let compound interest work its magic. And look, that's real. That's genuinely solid advice. But when you're 22, pulling in $38,000 a year, trying to figure out rent and student loans, and whether you can stretch your groceries past Tuesday, being told to max out your 401k feels almost cruel, like someone sliding you a Michelin star recipe when you don't even have a stove. And then we jump straight to your 60s. Social Security timing, Medicare, downsizing, estate planning. All of it important, sure. But your 40s get this weird, awkward silence. Like the financial world just decided, eh? They've either figured it out by now or it's too late to bother. So we move on. Neither of those things is true. What's actually happening in your 40s is a lot more complicated than that. And honestly, a lot more human. Most people in their 40s are carrying more financial weight than they ever have, and doing it while also feeling that first real creeping awareness of, wait, how much runway do I actually have left? Maybe you have a mortgage. Maybe you're still renting, and there's a quiet shame you carry about that. Maybe your kids are getting close to college age, which is its own whole panic attack. Maybe your parents are starting to need help financially, physically, emotionally. Maybe your career is in this weird place where you're either climbing and it's exhausting, or you've leveled off, and that's a different kind of heavy. And somewhere underneath all of that, retirement planning just sits there, like a browser tab you keep meaning to click on. You'll get to it. Just not today. That's not laziness. That's not you being irresponsible. That's just what it actually feels like to be a person in your 40s in America right now. The system is genuinely hard to navigate. The demands on your time and your money are real. And nobody handed you a guidebook. But here's where I want to push back gently, and I mean that on one thing. That voice that says, it's too late, or I'll deal with it later, that voice gets more expensive every single year you listen to it. Not because you're failing at something, but because of the very specific way time and money work together. And that's what we actually need to talk about. Okay, let's talk about the actual math. Not to freak you out, I promise that's not the point. The point is that understanding the numbers usually makes them less terrifying, not more. Because most people are walking around with this low-grade anxiety about retirement, and they can't even tell you specifically what they're worried about. And that's the thing about anxiety. It loves vagueness. The moment you get specific, even if what you find is uncomfortable, at least you have something real to work with. So here's a framework that financial planners commonly use as a starting point. Not a hard rule, everyone's situation is different, but a useful place to begin. The general target is that by the time you retire, you want somewhere around 10 to 12 times your final annual salary saved up. So if you're earning $80,000 a year, you're aiming somewhere in the $800,000 to $960,000 range. Making $100,000. You're thinking roughly $1 million to $1.2 million. Take a breath if you need to. Those numbers do something to people. That's normal. Now here's why your 40s specifically are the moment that matters. Say you're 42. You've got $150,000 saved, which, by the way, already puts you ahead of most Americans your age. If you stopped contributing today, never added another dollar, and that money just grew at the stock market's historical average of around 7% a year, by 65, you'd have roughly $560,000. Which sounds okay until it doesn't. Because $560,000, drawn down at the standard 4% withdrawal rate, gives you about $22,400 a year to live on. Before inflation, before healthcare, before any of the things that quietly get more expensive as you get older. That's the gap. That's the thing sitting in the back of your head that you couldn't quite name. But here's where it actually turns around. That same person, same age, same $150,000 starting point, starts putting in $800 a month from here on out. $800. Real money, yes, but not an extraordinary life-upending amount. At that same 7% growth over 23 years, that monthly contribution adds roughly another $560,000 on top. Now you're looking at over $1 million. Same person, same starting point. Just steady, consistent additions over time. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's not magic. That's just time working for you instead of against you. And your 40s are the last real window where time is still mostly in your corner. But I want to stop here for a second, because I think this is exactly where most financial content gets it wrong. It shows you the math, and then it says, so just save more. Like the only thing standing between you and a secure retirement is a decision you simply haven't gotten around to making. And honestly, that framing is a little insulting to how complicated real life actually is. The reason most people in their 40s aren't saving more isn't because they don't know that saving is good. Everyone knows saving is good. It's because of something a lot more layered than that. There's a concept in behavioral economics called present bias. It's this deeply wired human tendency to value what we need right now way more heavily than what we'll need 20 years from now. And it makes complete sense when you think about it. Brains were built to solve immediate problems. They were not built to care deeply about a version of our life that doesn't exist yet. Retirement is abstract. Your kid's tuition next semester is not abstract. Your car payment is not abstract. That family vacation you keep promising yourself, the one you've earned after the last few genuinely brutal years, that's not abstract either. So when you're forced to choose between something immediate and real and something distant and hypothetical, the immediate thing wins. Almost every time. That's not a character flaw. That's just how human brains work. But here's the thing. Once you actually see that pattern in yourself, you can do something about it. Because you can stop relying on willpower and just design around the problem. Make the future decision automatic, so it doesn't have to compete with today's decisions at all. Now, there's something else going on in your 40s that I don't think gets nearly enough attention. This decade tends to be the peak of what I'd call financial compression. Your income is probably the highest it's ever been, but so are your expenses, and often for the first time in your life, those two things are right up against each other, sometimes even overlapping. Think about what actually happens when your income goes up. Maybe you're finally making real money more than you ever have. And then, almost without noticing it, life expands to fill it. The house gets a little bigger. The cars get a little nicer. Vacations become a more regular thing. The kids are in more activities, better ones, pricier ones. None of these decisions feel crazy on their own, but all of them together somehow create this situation where making more money doesn't actually feel like having more money. Economists call it lifestyle inflation. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. I just call it being human. We get used to what we have. Then we want a little more. Then we get used to that. The problem specifically in your 40s is that lifestyle inflation tends to peak at almost exactly the same moment you most need to be building financial runway. And if those two things are competing, spending growth versus savings growth, spending wins by default. Not because you're careless, just because it's right there in front of you. And the future isn't. There's something else hitting people in their 40s that doesn't get talked about enough. This is usually when the sandwich generation pressure kicks in. Your parents are getting older. Maybe they need financial help. Maybe they need the kind of emotional support that pulls you away from work, which has its own quiet cost. Maybe actual care expenses start showing up on your credit card statement. And at the same time, your kid is 14, 15, 16. College is no longer some distant concept. It's right around the corner. And in this country, college costs have become their own completely separate math problem that nobody warned you about. I'm not going to sit here and pretend there's a neat, clean answer for any of that. There isn't. But I want to say something directly, because I think it matters. You cannot fund your retirement from an empty account. And you cannot truly show up for the people you love if your own financial foundation is crumbling underneath you. That's not selfish. That's just structural reality. It's the oxygen mask thing. You put yours on first. Not because you love the person next to you any less, but because you're no use to them if you've already passed out. There's also something psychological that happens in your 40s that I think is really worth naming. A lot of people start doing what I'd call retirement math avoidance. They don't open the 401k statements. They don't touch the retirement calculators. They keep meaning to have the conversation with their partner and somehow never quite get there. And this avoidance isn't random, and it's not laziness. It's actually protective. Your brain is genuinely shielding you from information it expects to be painful. It's trying to help. But here's the cruel irony of that. The avoidance makes the eventual reality worse. Every month you don't look at the actual numbers is a month less you have to adjust. And the less time you have to adjust, the bigger and more painful that adjustment has to be when you finally do look. So the very thing that's protecting you emotionally right now is quietly creating more financial stress down the road, which is why I'd argue that the single most valuable thing someone in their 40s can do more than any specific financial product, more than hitting a particular savings percentage, is building the emotional capacity to actually look, to open the statement, to sit with whatever the number is, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's worse than you expected. And then to make small, steady decisions from a place of clarity instead of from a place of dread. That's the real skill. Not the spreadsheet, not the right fund allocation. The ability to stay present with uncomfortable information and move forward anyway. It's harder than it sounds, but it's also a lot more within reach than most people think. Hey, I want to talk to you about a mindset shift that completely changed how I think about money, especially once you hit your 40s. Most people look at retirement savings like it's this big sacrifice, like, I'm giving up money now so some future version of me can have it later. When you think about it that way, every single contribution feels like a loss. It feels like you're depriving yourself. And let's be honest, humans suck at long-term voluntary deprivation. Eventually, we drift away from it. But what if you flipped the script? You're not just saving money for some blurry old guy you can barely picture. You're buying something real. You're buying options. You're buying the freedom to choose. You're buying the ability to say no when you need to. Let me make this super concrete. Every $100,000 you've got saved by the time you're 60 gives you roughly 4 to 5 years of not having to work, depending on how you live. That's not some vague number. That's 4 or 5 years of, I don't have to take that crappy job. 4 or 5 years of, I can walk away from this toxic boss without having a panic attack. 4 or 5 years of, I can actually be there for my parents when they need me, instead of stressing about money. Think about your current job. Would you feel different about it if you knew you could leave tomorrow and still be totally fine for the next 3 years while you figured out what's next? Most people would breathe a huge sigh of relief because a lot of what makes work miserable isn't even the work itself, it's that trapped feeling, the feeling that you can't leave. We call those golden handcuffs. I just call it financial anxiety wearing a suit and tie. The fix isn't always making more money. Sometimes it's building more cushion, more runway, more of that quiet confidence that says, I'll be okay even if this goes sideways. Once you start seeing your retirement savings as freedom, you're slowly stacking up instead of money locked away in some dusty account, everything changes. It stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. And one more shift. Stop comparing your situation to where you think you should be. Those comparisons are usually based on fake averages that don't reflect real life. Some people your age are way ahead because they got help from family or hit it big somewhere. Others are behind because life threw medical bills, divorce, or a brutal layoff at them. Nobody's running the same race. What actually matters is where you are right now and whether you're moving in the right direction, not perfectly, just consistently. At the end of the day, the people who end up financially okay aren't usually the ones who never made mistakes. They're the ones who made enough good decisions, bounced back from the bad ones, and kept going without letting shame or perfectionism knock them out of the game. All right, let's get into what this actually looks like in real life, because I don't want this to be one of those videos that leaves you feeling inspired, but with zero clue what to do when you wake up tomorrow. First thing, and I really believe this is the foundation, is to just look. Open the account. Pull up the retirement calculator. Have the honest conversation with your partner if you have one. I know it sounds almost too basic, but facing the numbers instead of living with that vague cloud of money anxiety is incredibly powerful. You can't steer toward a destination you're scared to even look at. Most 401k providers have these built-in retirement projectors now. Just log in, plug in your current balance, how much you're contributing, and when you want to retire. Whatever number it spits out, good, bad, or ugly, that's real information. Now you're working with facts instead of fear. Second, prioritize bumping up your savings rate before you upgrade your lifestyle. I get it, you finally start making decent money, and you want to enjoy it. You should enjoy it. But when you get a raise or a bonus, try routing at least half of it into savings before you get used to spending it. That one move compounds like crazy over 15 or 20 years. There's a really smart trick called Save More Tomorrow that researcher Shlomo Benartzi came up with. The idea is simple. It's way easier to commit to saving more of your future raise than cutting into the money you already have in your pocket. A lot of 401k plans let you turn on automatic escalation. Your contribution percentage goes up by 1% every year. If yours has that, flip it on. It's one of the easiest wins out there. Third, if you're 40 or older, take full advantage of catch-up contributions. The IRS literally gives you permission to save more than younger folks. As of right now, once you hit 50, you can put up to $30,500 into your 401k instead of the usual $23,000. That's an extra $7,500 a year, tax advantage. Even if you're not 50 yet, just knowing that extra runway is coming can be motivating. Fourth, take an honest look at your debt. No shame, just clarity. Not all debt is created equal. A low-rate mortgage is very different from credit cards charging you 20% plus. Paying off high-interest credit card debt is basically a guaranteed 20% return. You're not going to beat that in the market. The basic rule I like is, if the interest rate on your debt is higher than what you'd realistically expect to earn investing, pay the debt first. If it's low, you can do both at the same time. But also factor in your own peace of mind. Sometimes the mathematically perfect choice isn't worth the constant stress it causes. Fifth, start thinking about your career as one of your biggest financial assets. In your 40s, you've still got 20 to 25 good earning years left. Investing in yourself, learning new skills, getting a certification, or positioning for a better paying role can have a massive impact. A $20,000 salary bump that sticks around for 20 years is $400,000 in extra earnings. That's often way bigger than anything your investments will do in the same period. And sixth, this one might be the most underrated. Have real conversations about money with the people closest to you. If you're in a relationship, getting on the same page about savings goals, what enough looks like, and how you both picture retirement is incredibly powerful. Money fights aren't usually about the money itself. They're about not talking about it clearly. If you're single, have that conversation with yourself. Write down what you want your life to actually look like at 65, 70, or 75. Getting that clarity makes every financial decision easier and more consistent. I want to leave you with one last thought that I come back to a lot. Our culture has this bad habit, especially with money, of treating the past like a final verdict. You hit 42, 45, or 48, and you look at where you are and think, well, the decisions I made already sealed my fate. The jury's back, and I'm just serving my sentence now. That's not how this works. Yes, the past matters. Your previous choices got you here. But the past doesn't get a vote on what happens next. Only the present does. And the present is always available to you, even on the days it doesn't feel like it. I think about the people who finally started saving seriously at 44, after years of just scraping by. People who didn't do it right in their 20s or 30s, who made mistakes they're not proud of, who got knocked sideways by divorce, layoffs, or medical stuff, and who still ended up at 65 in a solid place. Not flashy, not rich, but stable, dignified, and with real options. Those people are out there, and they didn't have some secret advantage. They just got to a point where they stopped waiting for the perfect moment and started doing the next right thing with whatever they had. Your 40s matter. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. This decade is important. The decisions you make now will compound, both in your bank account and in your peace of mind. But important doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means it's worth paying attention to. So if this video did anything, I hope it gave you a little more clarity about where you stand and why it matters, and a little less of that free-floating anxiety about everything you should have done differently. Anxiety without direction is just noise. But clarity, even the uncomfortable kind, that's something you can actually build on. You're not behind in some race. You're navigating your own life, and there's still a good stretch of road in front of you. Progress over perfection, always. If this hit home for you, not in a smash like and subscribe way, but in a real human way, share it with someone in their 40s who might need to hear it. Because the best money conversations usually start when someone feels a little less alone. Take care of yourself. I am Sophia, and if you want to save your hard-earned money and get rich, make sure you subscribe to the channel.